Why are you so big in America? Why has it happened so quickly for you?
I think because we work hard, and also because we haven't compromised on the way we look, on the way that we think about things. You know, we haven't gone to America and watered down our act. A lot of English bands, you know, when they started to feel success in America, they cut off their hair, they took off their false eyebrows, and basically made a real compromise. But with Culture Club, my attitude was go there, give them some culture, you know, bring them some English... bring them some real English eccentricity, because, I mean, let's face it, England, our culture is based on eccentricity, you know. And I think that it's good for the Americans, because I think a lot of the time, you know, their idea of glamour is very... It's like, our idea of glamour comes from the street. Young kids are glamorous in England, you know. A lot of fashion, a lot of the top fashion designers steal their ideas from young people, like 15, you know, kids that are coming out of college. Whereas in America, glamour is much older. People are old stars. And it's a new generation now.
But wasn't it hard for Middle America, particularly? I can understand the East Coast and the West Coast accepting you, but the whole... What about the Bible Belt and the southern states? I mean, what's their reaction to you?
The word accepting obviously doesn't come into it because, number one, I haven't accepted us at all. I was watching a programme a week ago. I woke up like 6 in the morning. I was watching Breakfast TV. I won't say which side.
Yeah.
And there was a programme on about kids that wore one white glove to school, Michael Jackson fans, and the headmaster said, God damn it, if we let them wear this, they might dress up as Boy George. And that kind of really brought it home to me that they love the music, but they haven't accepted me, not at all. I mean, you know, when we did the Grammy Awards, I turned around and I said, America, you know a good drag queen when you see one. And of course, it was like, they analysed that, and then the next day in some of the colleges in Middle America were analysing what I'd said, you know, what do you think of what George says, you know. So I think that they're very worried about me there. They kind of... But then I suppose that's the general attitude all over the world.
Oh, you're not accepted in some countries, are you? You had a hard time, was it France you had a hard time getting in and out of?
Oh, no, the French always hated the English.
Yeah, they hate them even worse since about the middle of last week.
No, I think that the French are very French. It's the only country in the world where I think, you know,
true.
No, but in England we accept other people's cultures. We're very democratic. In France is France, the French are French, and they don't take anything else. And, you know, they don't really react. I mean, you're very lucky. We played in Strasbourg, and we played 17,000 people in America. Strasbourg, 200 people came. That was more than the first...
But you don't think it's anything to do with the language?
No, they're just very lazy, you know. Oh, rock and roll, you know. It's kind of... They're more into potatoes and wine and things like that.
But it would seem to me that some of the music you do is closer to the Eurovision Song Contest than to the
it's funny because
rock and roll.
Roy, our guitarist, when we played in France, he couldn't believe why we only played to a half-full audience, because we sold 1 million singles in France of Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Karma Chameleon has sold, you know, over 1 million. But, you know, they don't have the same appreciation for music in France or Europe. I mean, my tour of Europe was the most depressing thing that ever happened to me. You know, in Italy we played to all men, you know. Not one person screamed at me. It was like... They just looked at us, and it wasn't, you know, because all the girls are the young girls are Catholics, and they're not allowed really to go to rock and roll concerts after, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night. So it's very strict there. So to play to all men was quite weird, you know.
But that's the strange thing about if I may say so, about your audience here, and I'm not sure whether this is true of America, but certainly here, it's right across the board.
Oh, yeah.
It's very young to very old. Mm. Why? Why do you think that should be?
I think because in England we're far more liberal. We're far more democratic. I mean, you know, you can complain about this country, you know, but basically it's the best country in the world, you know, for everything, you know. All the best things happen here, you know, music. England, I think, is like a laboratory for ideas, and all the best things happen here. I mean, whether or not we capitalise on our best assets is another thing. I mean, I think a lot of the time, you know, we could really put more into our musicians. Like at school, I was never really encouraged to do music. It was, you can't kick a ball right outside the class. You know, it wasn't a case of giving you and making you do what you were good at. It was a case of do everything else, or, you know, do.
But
what
maybe
you
were an unconventional pupil.
I don't think so.
I mean, I bet you were.
I wasn't actually. I think that I knew what I wanted. I think there are very few people who know what they want. Obviously.
But your headmaster reckoned you were unteachable.
Well, he was very untalkable too.
But you see, a school can't cope with eccentrics, can it? I mean, you've got to have confirmation.
I wasn't always an eccentric. I think that...
I bet you were, really.
No. I think that I've always been very logical. One of the things which my mother always says is that you know, when I made a comment to her, it was a logical comment. I didn't just say, I'm not doing it. You know, I kind of give a good reason. And at school, I did the same thing, you know. If I felt that something was unjustified, then I'd say so. And obviously it got me into a lot of trouble because it's easier to teach 20 people who think the same than it is to teach 19 and one that doesn't.
Of course.
But I don't think that's such a good thing, really.
Should there be schools for people, special schools for people like you?
Yeah, a school for weirdos.
No, I didn't mean that, but for people with special talents or people who take a different view.
Well, I don't know, actually. No, I think that's a
one
bit
person
impractical.
like you in a class is going to disrupt the whole class. You can see how the headmaster felt.
But also, you see, there were girls at my school who now work behind the Sainsbury's checkout, you know, who were just as cheeky as I was. And they really had you know, they didn't aspire to being pop stars. They were just cheeky young girls. And everything that was said, you know, they would comment to. So there was a lot of it going on at my school. I mean, also, because my headmaster, who you see in the papers quite a lot, he used to wear a board and tassel. So he had this 1,000-pleated cape. I mean, he was a complete drag queen. Well, you see, I think there's a certain amount of hypocrisy within society because a priest wears a dress, it's not a dress. If a Hare Krishna walks past a building site, nobody whistles. But if Boy George does, oh well, when I wasn't Boy George, it was whoosh, whoosh, get a load of that, you know, slap your legs. But it was, but, you know, you never, you know, when you imagine that something's part of somebody's culture, you don't object to it. But I think there is a lot of hypocrisy in this world. You know, I mean, this is a kilt, so I'm not wearing a skirt. This is a kilt, a Scottish kilt. Now, this isn't a dress. So, you know, if I had big football knees and hairy legs, which I haven't actually, but if I did have, I would be quite acceptable. It's because I'm not the norm, but I feel very normal because what I do is very normal for me. You know, so in a way, I don't have to justify myself.
But to get back to my original question, remember that question all those years ago when I said, why is it that older people have no difficulty accepting you? Is it because your songs are soft? Is it because they're ballads? Or is it because your image is not... it's not challenging any sex. There's no aggressive sexuality about your image.
I believe that if you want to educate somebody, it's like if you want to blow up a building, there's no point throwing a bomb through the window. You've got to go inside and plant it in the middle. That's the best way to bring it down. And I think a lot of people, their attitude is, I'm going to shock. Now, my attitude is a very intelligent attitude. I think there are hundreds of pubs all over England where there are drag queens you can go and laugh at. I'm not a drag queen. I don't want to be laughed. I'm very serious. And I think if you want to confront the world with eccentricity, you have to have a good explanation. You know, it's okay to be a clown in a circus, but not to be a clown in a supermarket. And I'm trying to make people more tolerant towards things which aren't harmful. You know, I don't deal with sex. You know, and
are you trying to get them to accept bisexuality, transsexuality,
no,
transvesticism?
No, you see, when you become very successful, the thing the press want to know is, are you bisexual? So I say, when I want sex, I have to buy it. Right. And, there's another one. Do you sleep with men? I never sleep. I usually try and stay awake whoever I sleep with. But basically, you know, I think one of the reasons I like Cliff Richard is because he avoids that. Why should he have to talk about his sexuality? Why should he I think there's some... I mean, I believe in monogamy anyway, and I think that you must...
I made the point because you said you were trying to make things acceptable. That's what I was asking. Were you trying to make that acceptable?
Say if tomorrow...
What are you trying to make acceptable?
Let me just put it this way. Say if the Sun tomorrow said, OK, Joe Wogan is a suit rocker. He wears a suit, and so the next morning, everyone you see is, that's a suit rocker. Now, when you look at... No, that's an illogical way of looking at it, but you can boil it right down to people who wear yellow socks. I don't like you because you've got yellow socks on. And what I'm saying is that, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover, and that's something that, you know, that's an old saying, that's an old wives' saying almost. And I think that you know, I try to be intelligent. I don't like to come across... I don't want to be just a rock and roll star. I want to be a personality.
But why have the old wives accepted you so readily as the young people?
People accept me because I think I'm intelligent. I hope that people think I'm intelligent.
But intelligence is not normally a reason why people would like you.
I think it is in rock and roll because there's so many dumb people. I think that, you know, years ago, I don't know, I think it's got a lot to do with rock and roll. Years ago, pop stars were very... They just kind of dressed up and they had these huge high shoes and outrageous clothes. You know? And they didn't have to justify themselves, you know. But now people, because I've come along and because I've got a big mouth naturally and I love talking, you know, rather like yourself. But you see, I mean, there are people who can bore you silly. I mean, you're quite charming when you talk to people. And, you know, you talk a lot. No, but you talk a lot, and I think that...
Not tonight.
You had to get one in. I just think that people like Boy George, and there are other bands like Annie Lennox, a lot of fantastic bands around, very talented people who look odd, but also have got some kind of explanation, they've got something to say for why they look the way they do. And I think that people, you know, you become like a parental figure. You know, there are a lot of people who really rely on me. And I think, obviously, you're in a position where you can influence people. And I think if you do that in a bad way, then obviously you won't succeed. But if you do it in a positive way, you can really, really help people. And
so it's the image first that will attract people to your music. That's really the way pop music has become, isn't it? It seems to be all image now.
Yeah, but for me, that isn't the case. I mean, I've tried to explain this because I didn't come along. I mean, in the 70s, a lot of the bands were old hippies, and they suddenly put a bit of glitter on, a bit of eyeshadow, sort of dyed their hair, and they became successful. But with me, I dressed up for years. I mean, I wore a kilt actually to work once when I worked in Poland Street, and the woman had a fit, and she said, "You can't stay here in a kilt, a skirt," you know, and she had one on. I said, why not? You know, you can wear one. It looks better on me than it does on you. But basically, you know, I think that we've made it very difficult for people to be bland.
Yeah,
you know?
but can you have an ordinary life now? I mean,
what's an ordinary life?
Well, I mean, you're obviously not going to walk down to the pub for a drink, are you?
I never went to pubs anyway.
Yeah.
You know.
But I mean, would you say that it will eventually make you rather like Michael Jackson, something of a recluse?
I am already. I mean, definitely.
That's tragic, isn't it? Really?
Not really.
It is a bit sad because you're a very outgoing person.
Yeah, but I find pleasure in different ways now. I go to restaurants. I go to quiet places. I like quiet. It's funny. I've gone the opposite. Years ago, I used to go to clubs every night, and now because I'm surrounded by people all the time, I like to be quiet, you know. And also, I think like Michael Jackson, I channel all my energy into Culture Club. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. I mean, that's why we're successful, because we work hard.
What about the O'Dowd family? How do they react to you? Well, that's your own Irish family.
Yeah, I have to say that my parents are very, very intelligent. You know, they've always been... if somebody black moved into the street, they wouldn't turn around and say, "Oh my God, the street's gone down a peg." You know, they've always been the first people to go and help somebody. I mean, we had a lady of ill repute living next to us once, and her house burnt down, and my father went in and rescued her in her underwear, pulled her out, and you know, he never lived it down. He had to move, actually. But, partly because of my mother. But, you know, they've always been very... They've always said, you know, talk to somebody before you judge them. You know, don't go up to somebody and say, "Oh my God, I don't like..." I mean, it's like, if you say that because someone dresses weird, you can't accept them, then you could say the same about crippled people and people who are, you know, physically disabled. You can't do that. You know, I never laugh at somebody who's disabled. I could never laugh at somebody like that. I could never understand anyone who does. I don't believe anybody is really that different. I think that we all want to be loved, we all want to be needed, and we all want some kind of attention and affection. And of course, everybody needs that, and that's what I try to give people.
But you dress like this then not to draw attention to yourself?
Oh, of course. You know, there's no question about that. I mean, of course I do. You know, but by the same token, I mean, why do you wear makeup on TV? You know, you probably don't wear it at the pub, but you wear it because, you know, it's part of your job. And the thing that I find hypocritical is that you turn on the 6 o'clock news and there's this guy, the weather is... and he's plastered in foundation and Max Factor.
He's not walking down the street in it.
Also, then I'm a bit more honest than he is, because I'm for real and I do it for real, and I'm saving the world. Which brings me to my gift for you, Terry.
Oh.
It's a present.
Oh, thank you.
You have to open it out and put it on.
Save the world.